Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. My name is Richard. I'm from London, and welcome to Pearson English Spring Days. Today, we have a webinar on how to develop speaking skills. In this webinar, our author, Damian Williams, will look at how to make the most of Roadmap's key features to maximize opportunities, not just to practice, but also to teach speaking skills at every turn. Damian Williams is an author, writer, and teacher trainer based in the UK. He has worked in several countries, written a number of books, and works as a Cambridge Delta tutor and examiner. So with that, I'll leave you in Damian's hands.
Great, thanks, Richard. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for coming. So today, as Richard said, I'm going to be talking about how to develop speaking skills. I have a slight problem, as you probably noticed, with reflection in my glasses, but I do have eyes, just so you can see. A couple of quick housekeeping notes, first of all. In case you haven't seen in any other talks, just to let you know the webinar is recorded. So if you do miss any bits or you need to pop off to the loo or anything, then you can always come back to the recording afterwards. And within 2 weeks of this event, you'll receive a link to the recording, a personalised certificate with my signature on, and a virtual goodie bag. So without further ado, how to teach or develop speaking skills. Now, one of the key features of Roadmap is that we aim at not just practicing language skills, speaking, not only speaking, but listening, reading, and writing as well. But we look at how to develop them, how to actually teach them and make them better. Now, let's start with speaking, because obviously that's the focus of today. Why is it important to actually teach and develop speaking skills and not just practice them? Well, let's have a look. Let's start with a little quote from Scott Thornbury. So he says in How to Teach Speaking, speaking is so much a part of daily life that we take it for granted. The average person produces tens of thousands of words a day. It's so natural and integral is speaking that we forget how we once struggled to achieve this ability. Until that is, we have to learn how to do it all over again in a foreign language. So quite rightly, speaking is something, it's a very complex skill, and it's something that we do subconsciously without thinking about it. However, it's only when we start to do it in another language that we realize we have to actually learn how to do it again. Speaking in another language isn't just speaking in your own language in another language, if you get what I mean. It's an actual complex skill which needs to be developed. So how easy is it actually to teach speaking then? Well, sometimes it's easy. As Jeremy Harmer says, getting students to speak in class can sometimes be extremely easy. In a good class with a good atmosphere, students who get on with each other and whose English is at an appropriate level will often participate freely, enthusiastically, if we give them a suitable topic and task. Now, I'm sure as experienced teachers, all of you have those classes where speaking works brilliantly, students have lots to say, and it can be fruitful and interesting. But obviously, as experienced teachers, you also know that this isn't always the case. And as Harmer goes on to say, however, at other times, it's not easy to get students going. Maybe the class mix isn't right. Perhaps we've not chosen the right kind of topics that students don't have much to say about it. Sometimes it's the organisation of the task which is at fault. But a problem that occurs more often than any of these is the natural reluctance of some students to speak and take part. In some situations, the roles that teachers play will be crucial. So this is it. Sometimes we have classes where we do find it difficult to get them speaking, and as Harmer said, it might be partly because of the task or the topic, or it might just be that students aren't great speakers. They don't speak a lot in their first language. Now, some of these problems are often confounded or have been confounded with recent world events. when we're teaching online, we lack sometimes the natural face-to-face atmosphere and group rapport that this gives. So therefore, we need a kind of structure that we can use in order to help develop speaking and get students speaking. And that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to show you the structure that we use to make sure speaking is developed in Roadmap. But first of all, I'd like to demonstrate a speaking activity, which we can then pull apart and look at how it's structured. So I'm going to need your help for this. So I want you to imagine that I'm a student who's doing this speaking activity. However, in order to be able to do it, there are some words that I need. So I'm wondering if you can help me with these. So let me just get the right pointer. The first of these words is an organisation. It's an organisation that I use. They have an app and a website. And basically, it matches people who have unwanted items to people who need those items. And the idea behind it is that it kind of prevents people just throwing away things and prevents waste. So the idea is you use this app or the website and you post on it something you've got that you don't need anymore, in the hope that someone might need it and you can give it to them. Now, does anyone have any idea, if you want to jump in the chat box, what this organisation might be? Ah, someone said it already. Mariana, very good. This is called FreeCycle. And yeah, basically it's an app or an organisation where you can give away free stuff or find free stuff if you're looking for it. Okay, the next word I need, it's a thing, and it's a rectangular thing, very solid, very hard and heavy, and it's what I use to build a wall or a building. Ah, there we are, brilliant, brick, that's the one. Okay, so the next word I need is this. It's like a kind of glue almost that we use to stick bricks together. Yeah, we've got it. Cement, or we call it mortar as well. Great, fantastic. Oh, you're brilliant teachers here. Give me everything I need. Okay, now the next verb I need is a verb which means to put things on top of the other, like that. Anyway. Oh, first answer there again. Fantastic. Stack. That's what I was looking for. Okay. Now, the next word I need, it's a thing again. It's made of metal, rectangular, and you put meat on it, or vegetables or whatever, to cook over it. Yeah, these are all close, these words. Now it's made of metal and it has kind of lines down there that you put something on top. A rack. That's it, we got it. That's what I was looking for. Excellent. Okay, and the next word I need is a verb, and it means to cook something with heat coming from the top or from the bottom. Grill. There we go. So grill can also be a noun, obviously, the thing we grill on. And the next word I need is a long metal or wooden thing that we put meat or vegetables on in order to cook it. A skewer, lovely. That's some brilliant teachers here. Okay, now, the next word I need is, again, it's a thing. It's a thing that you use to cook outside. Yeah, barbecue. Or just BBQ. So put, yeah. And one more word. So it's a verb, again, it's a phrasal verb. And when you're cooking a barbecue, first of all, you have flames, you have fire come up from the charcoal. But you don't really want to put anything on it to cook until the flames die down. That's what I was looking for. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Now, that's not all I need. I don't just need some vocabulary. I also need some other words to help me do what I'm about to do in my task. Now, I want you to imagine if you're given instructions how to do something, then you kind of need some sequencing words to order those instructions. So you might start with something like first or firstly. What else might we need? Then, yeah. Next, someone said as well. Oh, what else? All of a sudden, after that. Yeah. Eventually. Secondly, thirdly. Okay, let's go with finally. Okay, great, fantastic. I've got more than I need there. Okay, so for this speaking task, again, I want you to imagine I'm a student, and I'm going to give you instructions on how to do a lockdown DIY project. Now, this is one that I did. Okay, so first of all, what you need is bricks. Now, you can get these in different ways. Maybe you've got some bricks lying around as you do. What I did when I got my bricks was I went through FreeCycle and asked a couple of people, and they very generously gave me some bricks. Now, you don't necessarily need cement or mortar for this, but what you do need to do when you've got your bricks is you need to arrange them in the right shape. Then you stack them up, keeping this shape. And after that, when they've got to about the right height you need them, you need to put in a tray and a rack above that. And then on top of that, you stack some more bricks. And before you know it, you have got a brick barbecue. So this was my big lockdown project, something I've been meaning to do for a long time. But because of the lockdown, had a bit of spare time, so I finally got round to it. Now, I know it doesn't look very safe, but trust me, it is. It's in a very sheltered little corner of my garden, so there's not too much wind to knock it over. And as long as I don't drink too much beer when I'm using it, then I'm unlikely to knock it over as well. Okay, so what you do, you get your charcoal going, then you put the racks on top of that, skewer your meat or your vegetables, put it on top, and before you know it, you've got a lot of perhaps unwanted interest from another resident of your household. So this is my dog, Poppy, and whenever she's around, the word barbecue becomes the new word dog torture device. Okay, so this was me as a student doing a speaking activity, one that we could do online. Now this is one that revolves around a picture. Now the advantage of doing an activity online around a picture is that students probably have a lot of them ready at hand on their computer or on their phone to share. There are lots of different things you can do, things like just a simple show and tell. You could do how-to instructions for a DIY project. You could do, they could do a recipe, a favourite recipe, showing different photos of different stages, how to cook everything. And there's lots of different language it could use. They could show a photo of an important moment in their life, perhaps talking about where they were, the background of it, using the past continuous, something like that. They could do what else? You could take an object, take a photo of part of it, get other students to try and guess what it is in the chat box, whatever, and then zoom out and show what it is. You could have students on their one form of exercise a day walk around and take photos of plants and things for other people to try and guess what they are. There's just a few ideas there. So thinking about this speaking activity, which I've just done as one of your students, few questions for you, and I'd like you to put your ideas in the chat box for each question. So the first question was, what was the goal? What was the aim of this activity? Provoke speaking, yeah. Okay. Motivate, make them speak. Okay. Imagine if this wasn't an English class and this was just something that someone was doing online. What would the goal be? So speak, give instructions, yeah. Storytelling, a project, yeah. Great ideas, excellent. Okay, the next question is, how did I prepare for this activity as a student? Vocabulary, listing ideas, share vocabulary, have a nice picture, oh, thank you. Brainstorming, a listing from a picture, great ideas. Okay, my next question. What language tools, what language did I need to do this task? Sequencing words, yeah. Vocabulary, nouns, parts of speech, keywords. Great, thank you. And next question, perhaps a bit of an easy one. How was this activity personalised? Photos, own project, picture, personal project, yeah. It was my own, yeah. Photos, interests, excellent. And okay, last question, if I was a student doing this activity in your class, how would you kind of round the activity off? What could you get other students to do after I finished? Ask questions, yeah. Make their own project, yeah. Take photos. Excellent. Good. Right, well, that basically leads me on to the next part. So it's talking about if it's difficult to teach speaking, develop speaking, maybe students don't want to speak, how can we structure a speaking activity so that we do develop speaking? So let's have a look. What are the ingredients of a successful speaking activity? Okay, so we've got 5 that we work with in Roadmap. And these are, firstly, the very first starting point is setting out what we want to achieve with it. So we need a clear communicative goal. Now, by communicative goal, what I mean is we should be having as our aim what we actually want students to achieve with it in real-world, practical terms. Now, the goal shouldn't be to practice speaking or to practice the present perfect or vocabulary. That's part of it, but it's not our ultimate aim. Basically, if you have, when we're talking about a clear communicative goal for a speaking activity, you should think when you're looking at it, what happens if someone interrupts my learners while they're doing it and asks them, what are you doing? The answer should always be something real world. So for example, if you interrupted me doing that speaking activity, and so what are you doing? My answer would be, I'm giving instructions on how to build, badly, a brick barbecue. It shouldn't be, I'm practicing vocabulary, I'm practicing the present perfect. These aren't speaking activities, these are language practice activities. So a successful speaking activity needs a clear, communicative, real-world goal. Now the second thing we need is, or students need, is preparation time. Now this could be just finding a photo, it could be making notes, it could just be silent thinking time, giving them a minute to think about what they're going to say, what they're going to include and what they're not going to include. I always find that the equation is almost cumulative. So a minute's preparation time can result in 5 minutes more of actually speaking time. And it also means students aren't coming to the activity cold. So they're not going to finish activity and think, oh, I should have mentioned that thing. They're going to have time to get all their thoughts together and then bounce ideas off each other, and it will be more productive. Now, the next thing students need is the right tools for the task. And by that, I mean the right language that they need. So whether it's vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and or functional language, actual phrases that they need to help them with. So for example, there you might look at the sequencing words, things like this. So yeah, if we want students to do some real world communicative speaking task, then you've got to give them the language that they need to do that. Okay, and then the next element or ingredient, I think, is personalization. This is something we're really big on in Roadmap. Personalization is good for a number of reasons. Firstly, students have something to say about the topic. In fact, they'll have more to say about a personalized topic than anyone else because they know more about themselves than anyone else. It can also help with shyer students because they have something to talk about. And not only that, if they're listening to other people sharing things about themselves in a supportive environment, then they're going to see that they're not going to be ridiculed or anything. People are interested in what they've got to say. So that, combined with the preparation time, I think, can help with shy students or people who don't normally have much to talk about. And then the final part of the speaking activity involves reflection. Now, this is kind of two parts. It's reflecting on what they've done and what other students have done by commenting on it, giving it feedback, and looking at what they've done well, what they could do better next time, but also kind of looking forward, taking out what they've done well and thinking, how can they apply this in the real world? And in this way, it comes kind of full circle. So they're reflecting on what they did in this kind of safe environment, and then looking at how they can put that to use in real life in the clear communicative task that they're doing. So all of this, that's right, it's going to help them build confidence. Let me just seen a question from Fabiana. Could it be possible to invert tools before preparation? Yeah, exactly. I think the goal is your starting point. Reflection obviously going to take place after it, but these three things are kind of happening at the same time or as we go along. So, thinking more about Roadmap. Now, if you're not familiar with Roadmap, then I've just shared a link to the chat box where you can see examples of it on the website. So how does Roadmap provide these 5 ingredients? So first of all, starting with a clear communicative goal. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the Pearson Global Scale of English, or the GSE, but this is what it's basically the framework that Roadmap is built around. Now, the GSE it's kind of like an extension of the Common European Framework, in that there are many, many more can-do statements, and they're much more practical in terms of what students can do with it. If it's something you don't know much about, you're more interested in finding more about, there's going to be a talk at 5 p.m. This Friday with Sarah about the GSE, and another one next Friday at 11 a.m. about the GSE. I recommend you tune into them if you can, because there's lots of useful information about how to use it. So the GSE, you can access it via the GSE Teacher Toolkit. I'll show you a link on the next page. And basically what you do is you go in here, you've got all the levels, and this is a slider, so you can look at whichever level is relevant to you. And there are different types of learners here: adult, professional, young learners. You can narrow it down by skill, and you can search specific words or phrases. There's, thanks Maya for the link there. So you can use it just to look at grammar, vocabulary, or particular skills, or you can just look at the main objectives, which mainly relate to speaking. So let's say I've just done a search here. I've narrowed it down to A2+, and this is an example of some of the objectives that come up. And there's the link there in the top right, if you can see at the top right of the slide. So we have things like can ask and talk about very basic symptoms and ailments, can make and accept offers, can discuss what to do and where to go and make arrangements to meet. So again, these are real world goals. They're communicative goals. They're things we want students to do. They're not, for example, practicing the present perfect, practicing specific vocabulary. On the toolkit, it's just the goals. But as a roadmap is then lesson plans built upon each of these goals. So in roadmap, each one of the main lessons is built around a clear communicative goal. And when we were writing each lesson, rather than kind of starting at the beginning and then thinking what will this lead up to, we always started with the end goal. So in this lesson, the goal is to describe past experiences. What we then did is said, okay, this is the goal we want. This is what we want students to be able to do at the end of this lesson. Now let's think about what grammar, what vocabulary, what other text input or listening input do they need in order to help them with this. So the starting point here is describe past experiences, things you have or haven't done. So the grammar that instantly springs to mind there is present perfect with ever and never. And then the vocabulary related to that is verb phrases related to experiences. Okay. So that's our clear goal that we start with. Now, each lesson, in order to achieve that goal, ends and kind of culminates after a build-up in this final speaking task. And each final speaking task is then split up into a prepare stage and then an actual speak and reflection stage. So in terms of preparation time, what we have for each speaking activity is they're often listened to a model, either in this prepare stage or earlier in the lesson. And this is a model of expert speakers, if you like, doing this task that we want them to. And that way they get to hear and feel what success feels like and the kind of things they should be including. So here they listen, and the way we've got them talking about experiences is playing a game called Truth or Lie, where they basically describe experiences that they have or haven't had, and other students have to work out if they're lying or telling the truth. So they listen. How does the game work? General understanding. Listen again for a bit more detail. Then they try it out themselves if they think it's telling the truth, and then they listen and check. And then the next part of the prepare stage here is students choose two that are true, two are false from these, and then they make notes and prepare on how they're going to explain them or lie or tell the truth. Catalina, it's from Roadmap. Thank you, Imogen. Okay, so there's preparation time that they have. So the next element that we mentioned as part of a speaking activity is tools for the task. And by this, I mean language and information tools. So this is what a typical lesson in Roadmap looks like. And this is from the A2 level, and it's called A Place to Stay. So let me just zoom in a bit here. So I'm sorry, these these white backgrounds are not very easy to read, so I'll read through them. So each lesson starts with the goal stated clearly and the main language tool. So here the goal is to choose a place to stay on holiday. And because they're looking at different places, comparing different places, and then choosing the best one, the grammar that seemed most appropriate for this was superlatives and the vocabulary related to hotels and places to stay. So that's the first tool they're given. They're given, if you like, a signpost as to what they're ultimately going to be achieving in this lesson. Next, they start here with the vocabulary. And the lessons don't always follow the same order. They have the same elements, but they don't always follow the same order. Again, it's all geared to what's best to getting them to produce this task. So in terms of vocabulary, they look at collocations related to places to stay. So for example, airport transfer, room service, that kind of thing. Then they're given some input, some informational input, and in this example, it's TripAdvisor type reviews of 3 places to stay. One in Peru, one in Indonesia, and one in Seychelles. And the next tool they have is the grammar, which, as I said, we look at superlatives because they're making choices and then choosing the best one. It's worth also mentioning here as well that in every lesson there's a pronunciation focus. And here they're looking simply at the pronunciation of superlatives, the ist endings. And the pronunciation focus in each lesson is always matched to the grammar point. So we don't just take kind of random sounds for them to look at. It's always matched to the grammar point, which again is matched to the final speaking task. So we're always aiming at the tools for the task. And then, as we saw before, we have the main speaking task, which is at the end of the lesson, of the prepare stage and the speak stage. And in the prepare stage here, again, they start by listening to a model of 3 people choosing a place to stay when they go on holiday. They answer some questions, listen, answer some questions, so they get a feel for what the discussions should sound like. Then they prepare themselves. They decide which things are important, and then they look at the back of the book, have some information about 3 hotels, and choose where they want to stay. Then, as the final tool for the task, again, same in every lesson, they have some useful phrases. And these are kind of, it's like the last touch, the functional language. And we often try and weave in some of the grammar, so the best views, nearer than that one, a bit of comparatives from a previous lesson, and a bit of the vocabulary as well. So we're kind of merging together the grammar and vocabulary and then squeezing it into this task. So as you can see, every lesson takes the final speaking as the starting point, and then everything else is feeding in towards this. And that way we can ensure they have all the tools that they need to successfully complete the task. Now, the next point we mentioned, part of a successful speaking activity, is personalization. So this is from a lesson at the B2 plus level, and it's on that favourite topic of British people, talking about the weather. Now, personalisation happens at every possible corner through a roadmap. It's not just the final task. The point is, personalisation, little and often in lots of different language tasks and contexts, it really helps students map the language that they're learning as they go along and kind of fix it to what they already know. So from the vocabulary section, they look at different types of weather, and then the kind of freer practice at the end here is they choose 3 of these topics and talk about them. So whether you had last time you went on holiday, a great weather experience, a terrible weather experience you had. And the good thing about giving them a list of topics like this and then getting them to talk about 3 of them is that they can choose the ones that they're most personalised, they're most familiar with. Also, it gives you that thing that if you've got a mixed ability class and you've got some fast finishers, they can then go back and do more of them as well. So from the same lesson, students do some listening, and this kind of provides the model for the final speaking as well as doing listening practice. So they listen to 4 conversations about the weather, match them to 4 of these, then they listen again for more detail and match these, and then they have another personalized practice here as a follow-up. So, sorry, get that in place. Have you experienced any similar situations to those described? When and what happened? And again, you might also want to bring in preparation time here, so you could give them a minute to think about their answers and then share them, discuss them. And then later in the same lesson, we've got kind of freer personalized practice of the grammar. So they've been studying ways of talking about the future, and then here we expand it out a bit. So starting with the weather next weekend, situation you'll find in your house or apartment when you get home, how you expect the country to change over the next few years. So there's more personalization here over a kind of wider range of topics. And then the final task is they can talk about the weather. And the thing about personalization as well is in these days of teaching online and teaching remotely, there are lots more opportunities for easy access to personalized things that students can talk about. So we started with that activity on photos, using a photo. Students have probably got lots of photos on their camera, on their computer or their phone that they can easily access. Even things like the background to them being online, their video conference. So looking around at mine, you can probably see that I play guitar, badly I might add. I like art. I'm always looking for opportunities to advertise roadmap. And I like people to think that I'm quite studious with the books in the background, although actually if you look at it, you'll see we've got a lot of children's books, old bills, stuff there, boxes in the seats. I'm actually quite disorganised, but good. So the final stage of our speaking activities, once we've given them all those tools, set the context for personalization, that kind of thing. Good question, Sophie. How do you balance students' privacy and personalization? Well, I think this is the thing with personalization. You're giving students the opportunity to talk about personalized stuff. And it's a good question, actually. But it's always important to let them dictate how far they want to go with that. Exactly, because they say as much as they want. And one thing that's also worth mentioning, often in roadmap, when we ask them to talk about personalized things, if there's a danger that that might bring up things that they don't want to talk about, we give them an alternative option. For example, I've been working on C1 recently, and the task was to talk about pivotal moments. And the final task, we asked students to talk about a pivotal moment from their life, but bearing in mind as well, that might bring up things that they don't want to talk about. So we give them the option of talking about pivotal moments in someone else's life or about their country. So again, they can kind of go as far as they want with that. So coming back to reflection, here we've got kind of 2 ways of reflecting, 2 aspects to this that I mentioned before in roadmap. The first is reflecting on other people's work, kind of providing feedback. So this is coming back to the experiences lesson where they play the truth or lie game. Exercise 10A, play the game with a partner. They do it. 10B, repeat it with a different partner. And then C, this is the kind of reflection bit where they look at each other's, what they said, basically. Who told an interesting story, who told an interesting lie. In addition to this, We take this a bit further in the teacher's book. So in the teacher's book, there are these guidelines for every lesson where we give them possible reflection questions. And this is where they can get more into the nitty gritty of the task, basically. The questions are different for every lesson, and they're tailored towards the task that they did in that lesson. And then the instructions here: put students in pairs to discuss the questions. When they finish, ask if anyone wants to share their ideas with the class, but don't force them to if they'd rather not, because learning is a very personal thing. So the questions here are, for example, what were the 3 most useful phrases you learned in this lesson? So again, it's a way of reviewing and reflecting on this. In what situations might you use these in the future? What can you do to practice persuading someone in English in the future? So here it's not just reflection on the language that they've used and what they've been successful in. It's also, if you like, if it's a word, proflection. So we're getting them to map what they did well and thinking about how they can transfer this outside the classroom. So again, it's kind of coming back full circle, and it's really allowing them to develop and apply the speaking that they've developed in the classroom to the outside world. Another aspect of reflection we have in Roadmap is this check and reflect. These are after every unit. In the higher levels, I think they're after every 2 units. And basically, it's a chance for them to review the grammar and vocabulary from that unit, from the different lessons. And this is quite flexible. You can do it as a test, or you can do it as classwork. You can do it review before a test, that kind of thing. And then the final part of each unit is this reflect section. So we take the goals from each lesson, the communicative goals, as can-do statements, and students rate each one as to how confident they feel with it. And then you can look at that, and they can map each one that they're not so confident with to specific parts of language that they can help with. I like that, Jose. In my class, I call it take-home content. I ask my students, what are you taking home today? I like that. I really like that. I think that's nice for students to have a kind of takeaway, something that they're getting out of the lesson. My other skills integrated in this book, Damien, they are, however, they're kind of developed as well. I won't go into too much detail with this because it's a whole other talk, really. But while each of the main lessons focus on speaking, linked to each lesson at the back of the book are what we call the develop your skills lessons. And here we have, for each unit, lessons which focus specifically on listening, reading and writing, and we have specific strategies that we use to teach and develop each one rather than practice it. So yeah, within the main lessons, the other skills are integrated, although the main focus is on speaking. At the back of the book, we try and develop these even further. Okay, we're coming towards the end, and as a roundup, basically, I thought I'd like to go over a quick overview of what types of speaking Roadmap teaches. Have a look. Okay, so this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. This is from me flicking through a few of the levels, picking out what I could see. So we have conversations, obviously, debates, and in higher levels, these are kind of extended towards things like formal panel discussions, things like that. Students give presentations, there are problem-solving activities, and we teach, as well as that, specific problem-solving skills, which gives me a nice segue into my next talk for the Spring Days, which is next Tuesday, when I'll be looking at future skills, things, how Roadmap helps students with future skills for further study, academic study, and employment. So make sure you tune in for that. There's narration, things like telling stories, anecdotes, sharing personal stories, There are negotiations, not just work-based, but day-to-day negotiations. One of my co-authors wrote a really nice lesson in a C1 level about someone trying to negotiate with their landlady and using different skills to try and be diplomatic, that kind of thing. There are surveys where they go around and ask different students on one thing. Ranking tasks, descriptions. There's quite a few descriptions. Again, this fits in quite nicely with personalization, describing experiences, describing things they often do, that kind of thing. Brainstorming, group planning. There's a nice lesson in A2 Plus where they plan an event. Role plays, simulations, summarizing things they've read, telling jokes. I can't guarantee they're always good jokes, but we do teach them how to have a go at telling jokes anyway. Mingling activities where students walk around and discuss things with other students or do it online and together as a class thing. Making arrangements, and there's also this last one I thought I'd put it in as it's quite relevant for the moment. Video conferencing, and specifically dealing with problems with video conferencing. So remember, speaking is at the heart of Roadmap. And from start to finish, our primary goal is to get students speaking fluently and confidently, whichever route they take with that. Just a kind of quick reminder, as I'm finishing up, in case you weren't here at the beginning, this webinar is recorded, so you'll be able to come back at a later date if you want to check anything that you might have missed. And within 2 weeks, you will get a link to the recording, a personalised certificate, so personalisation still going on beyond the webinar, and a virtual goodie bag. So I will try my best to keep up with them, but I may miss a few of them. But if you have questions, see if you can pop them in the chat box now.
So one of them is around about how do you get either beginner or shy students to speak? Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Can you hear me, Damian?
I can, yeah.
So there was a question that we had around getting shy students or beginner students to speak. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, that was, I think that was the one that it just disappeared before I managed to get to it. Yeah, well, I think that is kind of the core part of these 5 pillars or 5 key ingredients. Shy students or students who are reluctant to talk, there are a variety of different reasons, but it's often either because they're not sure what direction to go in which case we give them a clear goal. And that can also help with confidence. We can say to them, okay, by the end of this, you'll be able to do this in English. It can also be because they don't really have much to say, in which case personalization comes into it. Preparation time really helps with shy students, I think. I think one of the reason they might be shy is because they might be scared of just drying up and not having anything to say. So by giving them this preparation time, they're going into the speaking task armed, if you like, with lots of ideas to fall back on. And finally, giving them the tools for the task. Students might be shy because they might be worried about making mistakes or feel that they're not as good at speaking as other students. By making sure they've got these tools for the task, the language to use, again, with the preparation thing, it's something they can fall back on. So it's kind of like a support mechanism, as it were. And you'll often find this will really help bring students out of their shell.
Thank you. I don't know if you're seeing the other questions as well, but at the other end of the scale, with this question about more advanced students, and how can you develop high-level students' speaking quality, register, word order, tense used, etc., without boring them or making it difficult?
Well, I think think with more advanced students, I think worrying them or making it too difficult is perhaps less of a concern, because they're more likely to want to be challenged. And this is, I think, one of the hardest things about teaching more advanced students is challenging them enough. In which case, this is, I think, again, where personalization comes into it, and giving them models. And again, the reflection, getting them to self-assess and looking at what they could improve on next time, at the same time as picking out what they've done well.
Thank you. Another question we've had is in mixed ability classes, is it better to pair or group students with similar levels for speaking activities? Or is it better to pair or group them with different levels of proficiency?
I think this is the $64 million question, and I'm afraid I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer for it. I think there are benefits of both, because I mean, I was always taught when I was training as a teacher that you put different abilities together. You put a stronger student with a weaker student because they can help them, and then the stronger student feels more confident because they've got an extra job to do, as it were. But it doesn't always work out like that. The stronger student might be more dominating. And you might also find that if you put two weaker students together who both know they're quite weaker, then they might have more confidence because they know, they're working some different ability. I think, and I'm sorry if this is a really rubbish answer, but I really think it comes down to the individuals within that class. And as their teacher, you're working with them often, you're going to know them better than anyone else. It just comes down to your personal judgment, knowing who works better with each other. And if it's a new class, trial and error, what works best through experience. I think that I've seen the question coming up quite a lot about during this COVID situation, how can we help, and what about online teaching? I think everything that I've said here today is just as relevant for online teaching, as well as face-to-face physical classroom teaching. Especially with, like as I was saying earlier about the personalization, I think there are so many more opportunities we've got for personalization now. Especially with, if we're all sitting at home and we're having a virtual class, then we're already kind of in each other's lives, seeing a bit of each other's homes, as it were. There are so many more opportunities. I could pick off a book off that shelf and say, I really like this book, it's given to me as a present, and share something like that, or a show and tell. I don't know, this is my favourite highlighter, for example. Obviously, you'd think of something better than that. But again, I think photos really work well because, and again, students are going to have photos on their computer with them on their phone and stuff that they can show and talk about as well.
A question we had earlier when talking about speaking more generally was, and motivation and engagement was, how do you motivate students not to revert back to their first language L1?
Well, I think if the task is engaging enough, and I think if they've got the tools that they need for that task, then I don't think they'll need to. I think often students are going to revert to L1 because they haven't got the language that they need to get a point across. So if you make sure that they do as far as possible before they start, it's going to be less of an issue. But again, with L1, if it's a monolingual class, I don't think we should be too draconian about it. And if you're there online with them while they're speaking, and that they revert to, they can do code switching or revert to a word or two in their own language, then you can step in quite easily and say, okay, the word you need is this, or just have them know that you're sorry, my sound muted there from it. Give me one. Sorry, my screensaver came on and my sound went off. But yeah, as I said, there are opportunities where using L1 can help in the classroom. Yeah, so I think we don't want to be too draconian about it.
How you would teach single students online and how you would actually teach a large group of students online. And do you have any tips on that? Hello, Damian.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Some questions that we've had are two ends of the same spectrum, which is one was around how do you teach a single student online, and the other one is how do you teach a large group of students online. I was wondering if you have any particular tips on that.
Well, with a single student online, I think it's going to be a lot easier in terms of things like personalization. And also it's similar in terms of normal one-to-one teaching. I think you can tailor things a lot more to what the student actually needs. You can find out what type of speaking they have to do in English, And with larger classes, there's always breakout rooms which can help as well, and you can kind of dot around them and monitor what they're doing while they're doing that. The other thing with larger classes is there's a lot more input, there's a lot more ideas. Okay, you're not gonna have each student individually be able to give a presentation on a DIY project or something, but they can work in groups, and then groups can work as like a mini classroom in a breakout room, and then you can have someone from each group report back to the rest of the large class and kind of work like that.
Thank you. Well, I think that may be the end of the questions for now. So with that, thank you so much, Damian, for your time and taking us through teaching, developing speaking skills with Roadmap. As Damian mentioned, next Tuesday, he will be running another webinar on developing future skills, again, based around Roadmap. So if you'd like to come to that, we'd love to see you. But thank you very much, Damian.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. Bye.